This year, I set myself a goal to become the best Chaos Galaxy TCG player in the world. Back in March, I entered Black Hole Battles 4, the first official tournament of the year. I put in the work and constructed a deck that nobody was prepared for. Nobody except for my good friend. A friend I shared my ideas with to get as much practice in before the tournament as possible. This friend also happened to be Secret 27, the current undisputed best player in the world. Black Hole Battles 4 was a special one to me, because the first time I ever won a tournament was in the exact same tournament 2 years ago, and I wanted to reclaim my crown. But I ended up getting cleaned out by Secret, who was on the exact same list. Though I was disappointed I didn't achieve the goal I had set, I was still happy that I solidified myself in the format and got myself a comfortable second place to start the year. Now that I've finished up with the last tournament recap, it's time for the second tournament of the year, Meteor Stop-Off 3. Wait, there's a new ban list? And the tournament is in 1 week? Ah, fuck. Okay, so if you watched my last video, you might remember I said this.
I'll need to start a progression of mechanical improvement over a long period of time, while making sure I practice consistently and discuss the game with other good players.
Well, update, I didn't. I was so busy working on that same YouTube video recapping the event that I basically didn't practice at all. To be fair, I knew there would be a ban list coming, and I didn't want to waste valuable time practicing a format that I knew would become vastly different in about a month. But other top players like Unseen Oddish were smart. They devised custom ban lists that were very well educated predictions of what the new ban list would look like. Using these custom ban lists, they could practice the new format before it even dropped. So on top of having absolutely no experience in this post-ban list format, the other top players have already put in some serious legwork. I had a monumental task ahead of me. I'd have to build a good deck that follows all the rules of the new ban list, get a grasp on what archetypes will be strong in this format, and since I can't just play counters to blue flames this time, I'd have to practice a wider range of matchups than there were last format. And I'd have to do all of this within 1 week. I think this whole issue can be explained by the fact that I'm pretty new to video editing. So creating YouTube content took up the majority of my practice time leading up to the tournament being announced. This time around, I want to script, record, edit, and publish this video much closer to time than the previous. Astonishingly, I'm still finishing up my last video as of entering this new tournament. From here on out, I'm going to dedicate time specifically to playing CG. There's no point making a series of videos about trying to be the best if I don't do what it takes to become the best. With all that in mind, I set out to put on a huge upset performance at Meteor Stop-Off 3. Also, while we're talking about the channel, I just want to take this opportunity to ask you to consider subscribing. It costs nothing but a click, and really does help the growth of not only my channel, but Chaos Galaxy as a whole. I know it's a super common tactic to mention the analytics, but I was actually blown away to see what percentage of people watching my videos are actually subscribed. So if you're enjoying the videos, subscribe. It'd be really appreciated. Alright, back to the video. The first thing to do now is to take a look at the ban list and see how the meta will be affected. First, let's look at what's been banned. The newly banned cards on the ban list are Mystical Relic Phantasmal Spoons, Point Turret, and Phantom Matter. These are 3 really big hits, because all of these cards are considered mandatory staples in every single deck, meaning that every deck in the game now needs to find 3 new cards worth playing in their place. This is actually a really healthy thing for the game, because for the last 3 years, there have been 9 mandatory staples. 9 cards that are completely unchangeable before you even start to think about what deck you want to play. There are some exceptions to this rule, but this only occurs with decks that either have a non-traditional win condition, or have a negative interaction with one of the said staples. Getting rid of staple cards adds a lot more room for skill expression, the opportunity for players to demonstrate their mastery over the game through their micro and macro mechanical decision making, not only because there are more choices to be made in creating a deck, but because there are less generic and instant advantage generating cards. Running low on stars and don't have a threat for this turn? Don't worry, Phantom Matter is here to bail you out. Facing a monstrous amount of damage because your opponent has gained a positional advantage in the game? Turn their hard work into yours with Point Turret. Good riddance. Now the 9 card core has been knocked down to just 5, with the addition of another hit from the set of newly limited cards. Cards that can now only be played at 1 copy per deck. These cards are Activation Activated Activator, Shape Knight Trungulon, Darkspark Diabolus, and Rela Hex Mine. 1 AAA gets knocked out of our list of staples, and 2 Darkspark, while a new addition from set 5, were arguably staple status as well, so accordingly, he has also been bumped down to 1 copy. Shape Knights, you might remember, took the top 2 tournament placements last event, so they've lost one of their Trongulon to help soften them up a bit. And Relihex Mine got hit because, well, people thought that with decks losing so many staples that people would run to Relihex Mine as an auto-include to fill space, since it's just a go-even draw card that has little to no downsides. But if you think about it, you never actually want to draw Relihex Mine because you'll end up with the same number of unique cards in the same number of turns anyways, just slightly trimmed your deck down. Since you only draw your card at the end of your turn, it's barely better than just playing another good card in your deck, and if you ever have a situation where you draw all of your cards, it's objectively worse. The next major changes on the ban list were erratas. For those of you who don't know, an errata is when the text of a card already printed is retroactively changed to make a card's ability more clear or eliminate problematic interactions. But erratas can also be used to adjust the strength of some cards, so long as the original identity of the card is not changed in any way, which is exactly what happened to Lagi of the Blue Flame Lamp. You might remember this card used to be able to search every single time it attacked, creating a really problematic loop. Now, Lagi is restricted to just once per game, which means even your second copy of Lagi can't get another search. Once it's used, it's used. This eliminates a huge problem factor from Blue Flame, which was its degenerate, infinitely looping playstyle. And this nerf has fixed that forever and it will never become a problem again. Which leads me to the second errata for the card United. Some of you might know this card as a fun little card for the Knight archetype, of which you remember is a bad archetype competitively. Well, United references specifically Knight creatures for its effect. And guess what new archetype just so happens to have the word Knight in every single one of its names? Shape Knights. So United has been cleaned up so that it no longer refers to just Knights, but 4-star Knights that have no ability, maintaining the original identity of the card, but keeping it out of the hands of Shape Knight players. Finally, I need to mention cards that came off the ban list, cards that were previously considered too strong that are now free to run at 2 copies. These cards are Combine Harvester, Skelligast, and Leviathan Crown. I won't go into detail on why these cards were originally banned, just know that Crown and Ghast unbans are a big deal. Ghast is now way more consistent and can make 3 creature boards for just 4 stars, and 2 Crown makes Polysium's high health stats much harder to just dismiss with card effects. With all those ban list changes out of the way, we can discern a few things about the metagame. Most decks lost a lot of staple cards, meaning they now need to find new cards that play as closely to their overall win condition as possible. The strongest decks of last format, namely Blue Flames and Shape Knights, have been toned down for this format as well. And decks that can utilize Ghast and Crown will now be a bit stronger. Now to address some more specific observations. While it may not seem like it, these changes were actually a huge buff to Polysium decks. Not only did they get arguably their strongest card back to 2 copies, but the banning of both Point Turret and Phantom Matter is massive. Since Polysium rely on playing a lot of really powerful creatures, Phantom Matter and Turret exploit this as a weakness by turning their own cards back at them. With those cards out of the way, Polysium will have a much easier time maintaining control of the game. Shape Knights are no longer hyper consistent like they were before. It was all too easy to set up Lionel and play multiple Hexator back to back with the last ban list, but now the main tools have been weakened, which makes decks like the King of 2023, APC, far more appetizing. APC is a deck that is often referred to as just a pile of good cards, since its main win condition is mostly playing just really powerful packages of good cards from other decks. Taking the 1-star Gaios package from Gaios for card draw, the big free 8-star creatures from Polysium, and a few annoying creatures from other planets to make the opponent's life a living hell. Top this all off with more free creatures for playing creatures from all different planets, and you have yourself a pretty solid deck. All these seemingly disconnected pieces come together to form the perfect deck, hence the name, a perfect circle. Though this deck does seem more appealing now, the loss of 1 Darkspark does hurt a bit, since APC makes use of a card called Soul Shroom. Soul Shroom requires 4 creatures from different planets to be killed in order to use its ability, something that Darkspark would often achieve very quickly. This means that any decks previously making use of Darkspark's ability to kill cards from the top of their decks have also suffered a slight nerf from these changes. Now pretty much all decks are running 2 Darkspark, but these ones suffer from losing it the most. Now in saying all that, that's my retrospective take on the format. Like I said, I didn't commit much time at all to learning the new format, so I dived in headfirst with this weird Gaios Shape Knights deck. The goal was to utilize the Glur package for card draw, as well as an excuse to play more 1-star creatures, and then splashing in the spicy extra small Rescue. Since Shape Knights lost their United, a key card for searching Lionel and getting it online quickly, Shape Knight players had to get creative. Extra small Rescue lets you play one of your 1-stars from your deck when you get attacked, letting me mitigate some of the damage and instantly getting to my Lionel. and if Lionel's already live, I can get a free card draw off of Thorngeborg. I actually don't think it's a bad deck. I think this is actually a pretty creative solution to the Lionel problem, and could work as a threat in the format, if I had any idea what I was doing. I signed up to MSO3 and got my ass handed to me by 2 Blue Flame players back to back to be instantly eliminated. A far cry from best player in the world. A lot of Blue Flame players this time around as well. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. With a reframed mindset, I set out to continue my journey to become the best. A few setbacks along the way would not deter my will to carry on, and I didn't want to end this video at a low point. I started testing decks like crazy, compiling a series of notes on every deck in the format, slowly adjusting my tier list as I went. I tested Polysium with all of its new merits, but wanted to put a bit of a spin on it. So I played these cards as a low-end backbone, to deal with the still popular Blue Flame matchup, as well as diversify my planet types in order to play Soul Shroom. Normally reserved for rainbow decks, Soul Shroom could act as an additional source of threats for no star cost, that would still be protected by Leviathan Crown. I also tested solo aggro, with the now legal Skelly package, running Skelipede over Queen for economy reasons. But you may notice I was sticking clear of the main threats in the format, especially Blue Flames. Mostly because I don't like playing what everyone else is playing. And everyone was still convinced that they're the best deck. And one fateful morning, I logged on to play some Chaos Galaxy against Unseen Oddish. I played Polysium for some critical data in what should be an interesting matchup. It was time to see if my list held up against Blue Flames. It was at this time I discovered that Blue Flames were still really strong. I ran a few different lists into it, but they were able to put up so much damage and draw so many cards. And looking back, the signs were always there. Sure, they lost their infinitely looping combo, but you know what else they didn't lose? Everything else. They could still get their package started with Largy despite it being once per game. They still had access to both copies, at least for consistency. They have offerings to Eos to maintain their star economy and drop Chakra straight to the grave. They have both copies of the Undying Blue Flame. They have both copies of the Shios Moon, which draw an insane amount of cards once you start stacking 2 of them. Chakra was still blowing away your board and hitting you in the face for 5+ points with little to no interaction. Completely naively, I had ignored the best deck in the format for a second time. I had dismissed it as, oh, this deck is pretty strong, but I should have a pretty good matchup into it. I'd planned to play against it, but not in such a powerful state. I had assumed that the ban list had done more damage to it. Once again, my metagame foresight had come back to bite me this year, and now I was going into yet another tournament underprepared. And the next tournament on the register to play was Global Day Cup, a tournament where yet again I went 0-2 against Blue Flames. I kid you not, I was 0-4 over the last 2 tournaments, and all I played against was Blue Flames. Now this is the part where I'd usually go back to the drawing board and practice harder and try to learn more about the game, but lately, that just hasn't been possible. From the very start of this year, this game has felt like it's been in a really weird position competitively. Tournament turnouts have been shrinking, and in general, less and less games are being played even outside of tournaments. It's becoming harder and harder to grind against other real players, and I've been playing more against myself than real people. I really love this game, and I want to keep pushing it forward, but I just don't think that competitive grinding is the most fun way for me to play the game anymore. And I'm not just saying this because I got rolled in back-to-back tournaments. I've actually been feeling this for a while, but Blue Flames being as strong as they are probably didn't do me any favors either. It is now at this point, I think it's time for me to change directions. I still want to try and become the best, but for me right now, that means trying to make Chaos Galaxy as approachable and fun as possible. So I'm going to be learning as much as I can about pretty much every deck in the game, and I'm going to share that information with you guys, without entering any tournaments. For now. Tournament Chaos Galaxy involves a lot of sneakily testing new strategies without letting the other players get wind of it before the event. Especially when it comes to tech cards in the main and sideboard, so it can be difficult when the people you're competing against are the same people you need to test your strategies with. And I don't like this gameplay loop very much, so from now on, I'm going to completely openly create the best lists I can and share them with you all here on YouTube, so that new players can get a deep understanding of these decks as well. Also, an emergency Undying Flame limit was just announced and approved by Zach, so hopefully that restores a little bit of balance and we aren't stuck in a tier 0 format for the next 2 years. This albeit short series on my tournament runs was really fun, and I look forward to doing something like this again in the future. I've been sitting on some ideas for other types of content for a while now, and I think it may help to reach some of the more casual fans of Chaos Galaxy. For now though, I'm going to stick to the labs and cook up some crazy builds. Until next time, peace.